Welcome to Critiques by Candlelight, the series where each episode we take a break from the hectic pace of games media and analyze a game at a slower pace. This week we're going to be looking at Pokémon Shining Pearl, the remake of the beloved Generation 4 games for the Switch. So sit yourself down, get a warm drink or snack, and let's dive in to Pokémon Shining Pearl. So to get this out of the way, Pokémon Pearl, the version released in 2006 for the DS, was the first game I ever played. So I have a lot of personal feelings about this game. I was looking forward to this remake since the Switch released, and we saw what Pokemon can be on the system. For all the faults possessed by Pokemon Sword, the environment it presented, the semi-open world, being able to see the Pokemon entirely within the world and approach them in your own way, it was exciting. I looked forward to experiencing Sinnoh in this form with my new favorite Pokemon added in from the generations following 4, mixing with my beloved older ones. I looked forward to seeing contests taken back to what it was in Gen 4, as opposed to what Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire offered. I looked forward to being able to build secret bases and decorate my own space within the world again. I like being positive when talking about games because I feel the medium gets shit on a lot, and I'm very passionate about them. I want to share the joy I get from them and highlight interesting things about different games, but for this one I'm going to have to break away from that because this game really disappointed me. This game isn't necessarily bad. After all, at its core, it's Pokemon Pearl, just touched up and put on the new console generation. And I love Pokemon Pearl. I think it's got some of the best designs of the series. I was absolutely obsessed with Cynthia and Cyrus's presentation, and Pokemon's gameplay is so simple yet addicting that there's not much to say about it other than it's simply great. But Shining Pearl is lacking the love and care that previous remakes of Pokemon games got. Pokemon set the bar for what a Pokemon remake is like, and Shining Pearl just does not clear that bar. All those things I mentioned, they are either not implemented or done very minorly. There are no Pokemon from any generations after Sinnoh. The Pokemon are found in tall grass like the older games in what was claimed to be for faithfulness, while on the other hand butchering contests into a cheap one-string Guitar Hero knockoff. As probably one of the only people who loved the contests in Gen 4, this was by far the biggest disappointment for me, as it had fallen even further away from the interesting series of minigames than Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire's very limited version was, and I didn't even know that was possible. The world is presented in a chibi style reminiscent of older Pokemon games, which I don't have as much of an issue with as a lot of people do. The facial renderings do look a bit off at times, and it's hard to take it seriously when the villains are doing villain stuff, but on the other hand, this is Pokemon. The stories are not exactly the epitome of dramatic storytelling in the first place. That being said, they had a chance here to tell something more dramatic in their third go at Cyrus's story, with him being probably the most fascinating antagonist of all the Pokemon games. He was fleshed out a bit in Pokemon Platinum and a lot in the manga and anime into possibly the most complex character in the Pokemon mythos. But they chose not to expand on his original role in Pokemon Pearl for these remakes, instead leaving him in his least interesting form from the base Pearl and Diamond. And this leads nicely into another issue with the remakes. They didn't include any content from Pokemon Platinum. None of the extra story bits, no distortion world that is the third Sinnoh legendary Giratina's home, and before anyone says it, no, this does not count. No. There's no updated gens from Platinum, which got rid of the lame puzzle section that even me as a math nerd playing the game while I was 6 years old thought was dumb. No updated teams for the gym leaders, no looker. And most shockingly of all, no back button on the Pocket. Such a basic quality of life update that was included in Platinum, but was also just overlooked for these remakes. The reason all of this is missing is because they said they wanted to make a faithful recreation. But it's hard to call this a recreation more than just an imitation. Recreations improve and update where they can. Pokémon especially does this. They have done this in every other remake they have ever made. But not this one. And if you're going to cite faithfulness, then why do contests so dirty? But by and large, it does stick to its guns with the adherence to the original, with only 7 major changes that I noticed from the originals to these remakes. Out of these, I'd say 3 fall into the camp of being for the better, while 3 end up downgrading the game. The leftover 1 is a bit of an inevitable change. See, the original had a game corner and a gambling minigame within it, but with restrictions on that sort of content increasing, it was inevitable that they would axe it to avoid an upgraded age rating. They replaced it with a shop that has a few pre-selected outfits to change into. Nothing like the customizability other games in the series allow, but it's something. Con 1. They ruined contests. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. This is the most unfun version of a minigame they have ever done in the history of this franchise, and contests were originally my second favorite minigame, behind only Pokeathlon from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. What is the point of a rhythm game with only one slow-ass input? Pro 1. Seals are better. Look at how fancy I can make my Pokemon's entrances. Yay. I genuinely love this. It's amazing. Con 2. The secret bases in the Grand Underground have been ruined. All semblance of customizability, decoration, and making it feel like your base are gone. Instead, you get statues, and only statues. Wow. Thanks. Really feels like home. Pro 2. The Grand Underground has these little rooms in it now that wild Pokemon show up in the overworld. These Pokemon are rarer variants than in the actual world and scale relative to your progress, which had an effect of making me hate the above ground encounters even more. You can't control when you get in a battle above ground outside of buying a bunch of repels and praying, and when you do, it's often the same for your Pokemon, who are all a fair bit weaker due to leveling up being so much faster with the now permanent EXP share that affects the whole party that's in every game now. This wouldn't be as much of an issue if all the Pokemon were able to be seen in the overworld, allowing the player the choice of engaging, and the Grand Underground shows they could have done it, but chose not to. Truly annoying, despite the addition to the Grand Underground being great in of its own right. Con 3. Con 3. The implementation of your Pokemon following you around. This may not sound like a con at first, and it isn't at first, but they collide with you and get in your way, making it more annoying than cute like it was in Soul Silver. In that game, if you move into your Pokemon, it flips around to get out of your way, but in this one, you just run into it and have to keep pushing it, while it looks around confused why you would even want to go that way. It's so annoyingly implemented that I often kept the Pokemon in their balls unless I was trying to improve friendship levels while trying to contain my rage at it. Pro 3. There's now an area where you can catch a heap of legendaries by inserting these tablets into little mini cave areas. I don't know. It's really cool all these legendaries are here, but it feels a whole lot less special when they're all just sitting in this park thing waiting for you to activate them. I want some hype for catching a legendary. They're super powerful godlike creatures after all. This just feels lackluster. And that's the feeling of the whole game. Lackluster. These remakes usually improve massively on the originals, but this just feels like the same old game with a few tweaks. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire included the generational gimmick of Mega Evolution, extra content from Emerald in a Delta episode, new Pokémon throughout, used the new catching methods of the games from that time in the shaking tall grass, and more. Heart Gold and Soul Silver added Pokemon following you around, the Pokeathlon, upgraded gyms, an improved plot, extra content from Crystal, and more. And having these comparisons at hand, and seeing the little they did do, and the seemingly half-hearted changes when they did make them, it just leaves it feeling like for Shining Pearl, they didn't try. And for someone who loves the original game, it just sucks. But thank you for watching the video. Leave a like if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more critiques by Candlelight. Good night, everyone. Duskin out.